welcome to the group discussion of the Hunger Games. This is our final discussion, and we'll find out what everyone thought and if they recommend the book.
Final
Right.
discussion.
That's what we're final discussion.
The final is very misleading. It's never, well, I guess it's the final discussion of this book, but it's never our final discussion. We always have many more discussions planned in the future.
Right. This is the end. This is the end of this book. Don't panic, anybody.
And sometimes we also talk
Final.
about the book still later, right? You know, like in some
That's
other,
true.
right?
Yeah, of course. Especially since like there's another book now, like the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Or
I saw a preview for that movie,
which I listened to, which is like not a book to
Oh.
listen to because it's like full of songs, like,
Oh.
and so the guy who's narrating the book has to go through all the songs, but he doesn't sing it, which I'm
Oh.
like, well, maybe they should have picked somebody who would sing and like put songs. Anyway, there's a movie coming out in November for that. So if you binge watched all the Hunger Games movies after reading this book, then there's another movie coming in November of this year.
Oh,
so,
good.
and it's about President Snow when he was a young man.
I saw
Kind
the
of like the
preview
making of President Snow in a way.
on
You saw
Friday.
the preview?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it
And
just
I
came
didn't-
out, right?
Yeah, I didn't know it was about
Oh,
President
good.
Snow, but by watching the preview, I suspected because they found a good character. Like the guy looks like a young Donald Sutherland.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, you could tell like that.
Cool.
Like that's how I was like, I bet you this is like his story or whatever.
It is.
But
Anyway.
honestly, like, what's the third book? The
Mockingjay.
Yeah, so I don't think I really liked that book because it wasn't Hunger Games. You know what I mean? Like now it was like the Revolution or whatever. And I feel like, well, we'll see. I feel I got the same kind of a vibe from this other new movie, but I think there is at least a portion of Hunger Games in the movie.
There
Like
is.
it's the 10th
you-
Hunger Games in the, right?
Oh.
And it's not.
Did you
it's
watch
10.
all the movies, Kim?
I have seen all the movies. After reading the book this time, I was super excited to watch the movie that went with the book. And then Fred likes the second one better, so we also watched that.
Cool.
But then nobody wants to watch the third. In my family, I mean, not in the world.
In
No.
the world. Did everybody watch the movies after reading or rereading the book?
I did.
Yeah,
me
I
too.
did. Yeah. Yeah.
Took some doing.
I didn't expect it. You know, like I didn't
So
even
I
want to
had-
reread it.
Yeah, I had never read the books, and I had seen them all the movies forever ago as they were released. And then reading the book, I was like, okay, I kind of remember the movie. And then watching the movie again after reading the first book, I was like, man, they butchered it.
That's funny. I felt
Right?
opposite.
Like, it's hard when you watch a movie first. Does anyone else find this? I know some of you like to do it first. It's like
Never.
because the
No,
casting is
nobody.
so different in your
Yeah.
mind. Though I think Jennifer Lawrence is great. Like Peeta's all wrong
Yeah.
compared to the book, right?
Yeah.
In my mind, great
me too.
actor, but he's just all wrong. And Gail's pretty right.
Gail's right.
He's
Gail is
spot on.
really good. No,
Said
Gail is
everything.
right on.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
He's so right. Yeah.
It's such a different experience watching it, doing it in that order. I was like, this is completely not the right order for me.
Book interrupted.
Okay, guys, it's 6 o'clock on a Thursday, and I'm home from work, and I have the house to myself, and I'm watching the Hunger Games, and I've had a shower, and I'm about to put a mask on and watch it, and hopefully this doesn't turn into 6 hours of having to watch all three, because sometimes that happens to me. I go deep. But anyways, yeah, I finished the book a little while ago, but I've been meaning to watch it now. So here I go. Oh no! Oh, Marissa Tomei! Oh, Matthew McConaughey! You've come over for dinner! Okay, bye guys.
Book interrupted.
I have a heavier question that's not related to movies and books, but related to
Okay.
the Hunger Games that I've been thinking about.
Is this the one you
Okay.
wanted to bring up last sesh?
Yes.
Okay.
So the capital is like all luxury, right? And like you kind of get this impression that like the capital people kind of lead these kind of like empty kind of materialistic lives or whatever, and then the people in the districts are all suffering so that that can be a reality, so that the people in the capital can have their luxury. So the question is, can you have luxury without suffering? And if you cannot, when is it ever justified to have luxury? Speaking from somebody who lives in a country that has a lot of luxuries, right? Like, I mean, I'm sitting here talking on a computer to my friends across.
Gosh, that's a good one.
Right?
The world.
And I think that's like one of the commentaries that the book is making, is that like all luxury has suffering inherent in it. And part of this comes from like, there's part of the book, and I don't know if it was this book or one of the other books, because I ended up reading them all, where Katniss is looking at her meal that she's eating in the capital, and she starts trying to figure out like how long it would take her to collect all the ingredients and be able to make a meal like this. And she starts going through like, well, I could probably get some wild onions, and then I could get this, and I could get that, and I could barter for this, and we could milk the goat and get something similar. And it was like this big amount of work just for this one meal that just popped out of a table with like seemingly no effort.
I wonder what, like, I think something that matters in answering this question is what we define, what we agree the definition of luxury is.
I guess it's like, but that's all relative, right?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Because like my first instinct was thinking about original, like, pre-contact indigenous societies, like functioning on basically everything's connected understanding theory. So everyone, it's all about giving, and that comes back because of that point of view. And so my first thought was like, well, that would be luxurious. They live in a perfectly clean environment where nothing is at risk of extinction because everything is respected. And that was the first thing I thought. But then, you know, from as a non-Indigenous person, like that's pretty much like crazy camping, you know, like from someone with privilege and luxury, right? Like, would I want to live like that though? Like, is that luxurious to live that way? And so that was what made me think, like, what is the definition here of luxury? Because obviously that a situation where people weren't destroying things, they were, you know, living off the land.
They weren't suffering because it was the give or take. But I think what I'm talking about is like, if you have something that you haven't really worked for and it comes easily and it costs you very little, but you get to enjoy the fruits of the labor without the labor part.
Like before the Industrial Revolution, for example, many people would enjoy the fruits of their own labors. And so whatever you're having is basically equivalent to whatever effort you put in, or whatever plot of land you have, or whatever things you grow, or whatever relationships you have to trade, or whatever, right? And then the Industrial Revolution happens, all of a sudden machines and mass production, and, you know, and then what you're talking about is created, really, and kind of with capitalism anyways in the Western world is out of control, right? Because people are working and then people are benefiting, and people, right? And that's how this luxury situation kind of unfolds. So it also, I guess, matters what moment in time, what kind of technology is involved. All of these things lend, or at least play a part in the answer. And if the ultimate situation is like the Hunger Games, then it sounds like, no, you can't have luxury without someone else incredibly suffering. Because all of those luxurious people, they don't know how to do anything, right? Because they've been so indulgent and taken from everyone else. They've never done for themselves.
Well, like I'm thinking about things like, okay, like let me think of a good example. Like I can go to the grocery store and buy a bag of apples for, I don't know, $7 or whatever. Like, right? But if I go to work, the amount of money I'm making per hour, I could easily, like in 1 hour, I could buy a whole bunch of apples, right? But somebody else who is putting into the work for all the stuff is way more hours, right? So like their amount of work Going to the grocery store and getting some apples is a luxury for me, where somebody else, they might have to work like a whole day to get something that's the same. I don't know about apples. I don't know how much people call it. Maybe this is a bad example because I know very little about like how I get my apples and like all the like different steps. But you know, I know they're being transported there, and there's a lot of work that goes into getting those from a tree and then putting it maybe in storage over a whole year, and then it goes to the grocery store, and somebody at the grocery store is getting paid to stock the shelves and stuff. But in the end, it's very little effort to me. So it's a huge luxury just to be able to go to the grocery store. But, you know, for somebody else, maybe who's at the beginning of one of these like big chains of production for anything, like, I mean, I've got a car and I've got a cell phone and all these things, somebody has to work an awful lot for me to get this thing that's very cheap in the grand scheme of my life.
It's true.
You know?
It's totally
No,
true.
it's true. I was
And
just
it's
saying
not
there is
fair.
no.
But you know what's
There's
interesting?
another-
So the person at the beginning of the apple chain, anyway, if they are, let's say, an apple farmer, the luxury is one step away. If the luxury in this case is the apple, they just have to take that apple.
That's what I'm
and
saying.
eat it.
It's a bad example,
Right?
I'm saying that's a bad
apples.
example.
But if
But
it's
a
an
good
iPhone,
example-
if it's an iPhone, right?
It's an iPhone.
The luxury may be
The
out of
extremes are a
reach
bit
in a
more.
lifetime, right?
Right? Like
But-
I have this
yeah.
thing, and like
Also-
how much suffering went into me being able to just like, you know, have this. So
we have to
you
be
know.
cautious though, because we can work this into reverse where it's like, then let's shut down the iPhone factories. Like, it's not fair, equal pay, whatever, right? And when things like that happen, the individuals whose livelihood depends on those jobs, even though from our privileged standpoint, we're like, that's not fair. They have to work 10 times as hard for 1 times the amount of our, like, whatever. It doesn't work for them. Like, it's a, I don't know what the view is,
Well,
but
in the
like, what you
iPhone or the smartphone case, it's a bit more like, it's so egregious. It's more like working conditions, I think. It depends on the thing. It depends on the luxurious item, I think, is how.
But that's
this
the
question-
point. The raw material for the iPhone comes from the Congo, and
Yeah.
they want to maintain the prices of that raw material to be low.
Uh-huh.
So, for instance, let's say a new government comes in and said, no, our workers need to be paid appropriately. This is how much it's going to cost for you to take this product out of our country. And then Apple goes to the US government and says, we're going to cut all our funding to this candidate, and unless you make sure that our prices don't go up, because then 8,000 jobs will be lost
Mhm.
and your ratings will go down for your jobs, whatever. So then the US government comes and threatens the Congolese government to pull aid and support and funding in their economics, and maybe we'll never buy any of your products going forward, and no US can ever buy something from Congo unless you maintain that low price. So then they do, because now they're being bullied into making sure Apple has cheap product for the people who live in luxury. And that's how it works. It's like politics. It's just politics is what it is. You can't have luxury without suffering. And there was someone, like they said, I can't remember who said it. They have an acronym for her name, like
yeah, I know who you're talking about.
AOC. She was doing an interview and she said, nobody makes $1 billion, because he was asking about billionaires, and she was like, nobody makes $1 billion. People only take $1 billion. And the guy was like, what do you mean? She's like, because the reason that guy made $1 billion is because the person who was assembling the product is getting paid not a living wage. So his profits are going up, so he can make $1 billion. But if he paid people appropriately, he wouldn't be taking the billion. He would be giving people the proper money for the things they do. So nobody makes $1 billion. People take $1 billion.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Ocasio-Cortez.
I think it's interesting that what Sarah's describing is based on interconnectivity every like the globalization is just mass interconnectivity. So like the original understanding of the original people is true, but this is what happens when it's not handled with respect, when you add capitalism and it's about greed and gains and money, and it's like a giant bastardization. So but for me, I just think it's ironic or interesting or whatever, like the interconnectivity remains. And this is what can happen. Like, this is why it was so important to really understand how interconnected everyone was, because this is what can happen if people don't honor the fact that, you know, my riches is someone else. It could be someone else's poor if I'm not, you know, participating in this system. Right. Participating in this system in a way where I know.
Having that responsibility piece, right? That you were talking about. It's responsibility for the whole of everyone being connected. And if you're not, and you're just out, if you have the greed disease,
you're just solo.
Money for your shareholders, and then you don't care, and you made $1 billion. We should go through and say if we recommend the book.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I'm gonna go first because I know what I'm gonna say. I have recommended the book, and I hadn't read it before like Book Interrupted, and somebody was like, oh, I was talking to somebody who had just started the Twilight series, and they're like, oh, do you recommend that book? And I was like, yeah. The Hunger Games was kind of like, did I say this already in the last one? I don't know.
Action movie. Yep, I sure did.
So I would recommend it, and I've read all the books, even the new one, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, although I listened to it, but I consider that reading. So yes, it's fun.
Leah, do you?
Yeah, I think I would recommend it. Like, I would recommend it to someone after like they disclose the type of books or entertainment they like. I think it's specific. Like, this is not a book for everybody. I mean, I guess that being said, what book is? But yeah, I wouldn't have a problem recommending it.
What's your apprehension?
I didn't love it. I don't think I would. I like the movies. I like the book. I like the book was better than the movies. I don't know. I didn't love it. I don't love it.
You're just like neutral.
So you don't.
I'm neutral.
This was the first time that you read
but
the
I don't
book
hate
and
it.
you're neutral?
Yeah, I would
first
recommend
time?
it if.
Yeah, I think this is her first. She's either liked it or not like it. This is your first neutral, I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty neutral on it, which is.
I'm surprised.
Yeah, I'm usually pretty decisive, but that's my answer. Is sure. I'd recommend it. Sure, why not? Whatever.
Neither here nor there.
Neither here nor there.
Kim?
If I don't get too serious, then I totally recommend the book. I think it's a great read. It's super like entertaining and just a really cool concept. But then if I put on like my serious hat and pretend like it's a nonfiction or notice all the ways that it mirrors the world or whatever, then I'm like, well, maybe you don't want to read it. Like, it is about kids killing each other. Like, I get why it was banned or whatever, but like the concept of kids killing each other as a fantasy, I love it. I'm like, ooh, that's going to be different. Like, how are they going to get out of that? Right? Like, that pulls me in. But if I think about it like, oh, what if kids really killed each other? Obviously, I'm not pro that. So depending on if we're looking at it like politically or just for entertainment, I'm going to go on the entertainment side and say, yeah, I totally recommend it. Like, it was a really great series. I love the stories. And I'm just talking about book one. I will recommend book one. I will withhold any opinions about the rest of the series.
They all like blend in for me, except for I guess the third one.
Yeah,
but that's because it's a cliffhanger. Yeah, like the end of the first book is a cliffhanger for the second book. And the second book has a cliffhanger for the third book. So
does anybody else want to be friends with Cinna? Or like her stylist. He seems so cool.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
He's so cool. And they
great casting.
Mm-hmm. I'm just gonna say that they picked the best casting for him.
Yeah, he's so cool.
Yeah, he's so cool. Yeah,
he's just so sexy and so cool. And it's like he's not even reverse aging. He just doesn't change.
Yeah, Lenny Kravitz.
He's just capsulized in hot coolness.
Hot coolness, yeah. Lenny Kravitz, hot coolness. For sure.
I didn't know who that was. I'm so bad.
Yeah,
like face.
Oh, in the movie.
Names.
Yeah.
In the movie.
I also, you know, the whole experience.
I also want to be friends with Lenny Kravitz.
Reading versus watching versus reading versus watching, like the back and forth and back and forth. I had the same experience reading the book to the characters the first time, like not liking PETA basically. But then the second time I did like him. And it was probably because I remembered him from the first movie. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't as upset about it. I was like, okay, this is who they are. Like,
yeah, for as
I'm
much as
used to
some of
it.
the casting I felt was off, a lot, actually more of the casting was really on.
Yeah, that's true. It's really just
Actually,
PETA.
Haymitch.
Yeah,
it's just
right
PETA.
on.
Yeah,
he did a
just
great
really
job,
Haymitch.
but like it had to
As
be a
Woody
different
Harrelson, perfect.
Woody Harrelson with his hair is so
he's
gross.
great. Yeah, it's so gross.
He's so
He's
Yeah,
so
what is
good.
her
He does such a
name?
good job at Haymitch.
Amanda, the character Effie,
Effie.
that
Effie.
actress, Amanda Banks, something Banks, Elizabeth Banks.
Yeah, Elizabeth is
Elizabeth
right.
Banks. Yeah, Elizabeth is right. Yeah.
She did a great job.
No, she did
I mean, her
such a great
character gets
job.
more and more revealed through the books or through the movies, rather. But I thought she was pretty good.
Yeah, she was good.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, interrupt.
So I recommend the book. I enjoyed reading it the second time just as much as I enjoyed reading it the first time. There's different things in the book that I forgot because of the movies, like, and that happens to me every time I enjoy a book or a book series, and then I watch the movies over and over because I like them. Then I completely forget things in the book. So I like those little things that were revealed that were different. Like it was almost like a secret I had forgotten. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I like that. I realized I like reading a book after reading a book, watching a movie, and then reading the book again. I like that. So I might do that more often. Yeah, I'd recommend it. It is super violent. I agree with Leah. Like, that's why I asked if she was like cold on recommending it because of the violence in it.
I'm very pro-violence.
She's a monster.
But
especially between children.
She's a terrible babysitter.
Yeah.
Or a really good one.
Yeah.
You only need to use her once.
Yeah.
anyway.
But Sarah does
yes,
not
I
like
would recommend
violence,
it.
I guess.
I don't generally like books that are violent, but I like it was entertaining. Every chapter was a cliffhanger, so it's not that I didn't mind the violence, but it also made you feel hopeful for the characters that you cared about. But I cried. There's moments in the book I cried when horrible things happen.
But like, is that a surprise? Like, I cry at most books, like even some books that aren't that sad. Well, not
Tell
all
me what
books. They're not
parts
like a
what
science
parts are
book.
cry-worthy in this book. I need to
When
know
she
where.
sang to
Everything with
Rue,
Rue.
and she tried to do the things for Rue before the helicopter came.
Yeah.
Or even when Rue just got shot with arrow and she was like just found her and it all happened. Yeah.
So close.
It was so I cried like that whole thing. I was like bawling and my kids were like, what's happening? I'm like, fuck, just let me read it. I have to get through this part. I can't stop now. But yeah, I would recommend the book. Yeah.
Cool.
Anything in the book you guys want to mention that we didn't talk about before we close off and go to the giver?
I just want to talk about like how I have this weird, I don't know if it's because like I'm concerned that people are going to judge me or something, but like when we're talking about violence and stuff, Lee's like, I like violence. Like, so do I sometimes. Like, I like Kill Bill because it's Kill Bill and part of that,
Kill Bill.
right?
Mhm.
So
Also, it's stylized violence in that movie that is
Yeah.
particularly fantastic.
yeah,
I
right?
haven't watched
So
it in a
like
while.
I just
watch
was
it all the
like
time. Kill Bill.
experiencing that like back and forthy where it's like, can I own my love of violence in that context, or is that bad? You know, so
But you're loving like fiction, like it's fiction.
Yeah, I like The
right? It'd be
Matrix.
different
It's
if you
super
loved
violent.
real life violence. That'd be
Yeah.
strange.
well, fair, because like that's even like when I was giving my recommendation just a minute ago, I was like, what do I say? What do I say? Because I know like both sides of these arguments, you know, and it's like I don't want to be bad, but like
We're gonna ban you.
yeah, totally.
Like
That's it.
violence.
That's
Just
it.
with the big
I wish we
band
had
thing
the
across the
graphics. Bonk. Yeah, to get it on right now.
Yeah.
I love how we both saw that in our mind's eye at the same time. Banned.
Almost everything I think has two sides. Everything, like
Sometimes
like,
more.
You love the
Coins.
visually artistic or stylized reading, like how they describe The violence sometimes can be too much. There's all styles, I guess.
Yeah.
It's all entertainment.
It's a whole other like can of worms we could
It's a
open.
whole nother.
Yeah, so
I,
that's
I
it.
feel
Let's
like
not.
I feel like we're
Let's
winding
not.
this episode down, so I won't.
Yeah, we're winding
won't.
down.
We're
I'll
like
leave the lid
teetering
on.
on we're teetering on the ledge here. Like,
Back away slowly. Just gonna
Back
slide
away.
out of
That's a whole other.
If you've enjoyed these video highlights, listen to the full episode on our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember to like and subscribe and ring that bell to be notified when new episodes are published. Find out more by going to www.bookinterrupted.com.
Never forget, every child matters.